Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Maharaj Parikshit, well equipped with arrows and bows, and seated on a gold-embossed chariot, spoke to him, the Shudra, with a deep voice, resounding like thunder.
Oh, who are you? You appear to be strong, and yet you dare kill within my protection those who are helpless. By your dress, you pose yourself to be a godly man, king, but your deeds you are opposing the principles of the twice-born Kshatriyas.
You, rogue, do you dare beat an innocent cow because both Krishna and Arjuna, the carrier of the Gandiva bow, are out of sight? Since you are beating the innocent in a secret place, you are considered a culprit and therefore deserve to be killed.
Then he, Maharaj Parikshit, asked the bull, "Oh, who are you? Are you a bull as white as a white lotus, or are you a demigod? You have lost 3 of your legs and are moving on only 1. Are you some demigod causing us grief in the form of a bull?"
Now, for the first time in a kingdom well protected by the arms of the king of the Kuru dynasty, I see you grieving with tears in your eyes. Up till now, no one on earth has ever shed tears because of your royal negligence.
The son of Surabi, you need limit no longer now. There is no need to fear the slow class Sudra in O mother's house as long as I am living as the ruler and subduer of all in India's name. There is no cause for you to cry. Everything will be done for you.
O chaste one, the king's good name, duration of life, and good rebirth vanish when all kinds of living beings are terrified by miscreants in his kingdom. It is certainly the prime duty of the king to subdue first the sufferings of those who suffer. Therefore, I must kill this most wretched man, because he is violent against other living beings.
He, Maharaj Parikshit, repeatedly addressed and questioned the bull thus, "O son of Surabi, who has cut off your 3 legs? In the state of the kings who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, there is no one as unhappy as you."
O bull, you are offenseless and thoroughly honest. Therefore, I wish all good to you. Please tell me of the perpetrator of these mutilations, which blacken the reputation of the sons of Pritha.
Whoever causes offenseless living beings to suffer must fear me anywhere and everywhere in the world. By curbing dishonest miscreants, one automatically benefits the offenseless.
An upstart living being who commits offenses by torturing those who are offenseless shall be directly uprooted by me, even though he be a denizen of heaven with armor and decorations.
The supreme duty of the ruling king is to give all protection to law-abiding persons and to chastise those who stray from the ordinances of the scriptures in ordinary time when there is no emergency.
Oh yeah.
This is text 8. It's not coming. Is it connected? No, I removed it. It's disconnected. Connected. See here. So this is text 8. न जातु कौरवेन्द्राणाम् दोर्दण्ड परिरम्भिते भूतले अनुपतन्त्य अस्मिन् विनाते प्राणिनां शुचः. Said multiple times or no, whatever you tell me. You like to recite? So word for word, just support.
At any time, Lord of the kings of the Kuru dynasty, Lord God, strength of arms, Paramite, protected by Bhutale, ancestors of earth, Anupatanti, grieving, Ashwin, up to now, Vinas, same and set, Te, you, Pranina, of living beings, Shishara, tears in the eyes.
Some like to or follow? Yes.
Now for the first time in a kingdom well protected by the arms of the kings of the Kuru dynasty, I see you grieving with tears in your eyes. Up till now,
The protection of the lives of both the human beings and animals is the first and foremost duty of a government. A government must not discriminate in such principles. It is simply horrible for a pure-hearted soul to see organized animal killing by the state in this age of time.
Maharaj Parikshit was lamenting for the tear in the eyes of the Buddha. He was astonished to see such an unprecedented thing in his kingdom. Men and animals were equally protected as far as life was concerned. This is the way in God's kingdom. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Lord, please guide us all so that we can understand the wisdom you are giving us and learn to apply it in our lives. Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And this is the section of the Srimad Bhagavatam which is basically introducing us to the characters. The Srimad Bhagavatam, as we know, is a conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami. And this conversation, the Bhagavatam's conversation actually begins, the core conversation begins from the second canto. It goes to around 12.4. So that is the conversation. Now, the first canto, basically, the people who are conversing are being introduced. And it's interesting over here, the way the Bhagavatam does is, for the speaker, there's a very brief introduction. It's only 5 to 6 verses in the first chapter, in 7th chapter of the first canto. That is where how Shukdev Goswami was the son of Vyasdev and how he was so detached and how he was so realized. That's described. And from there onwards, the listener, his introduction is being given from 1.7 to 1.19. And that is how great a person was he. So how great were his forefathers, his ancestors, what is a great dynasty he was born in, and what was the adversity in which he appeared, how the Lord protected him at the time of death. And now specifically, the prophecies that were made at the time of his birth, of what all illustrious qualities he would have, those are being displayed through his actions. So here, he is vigilantly traveling in his kingdom to see what is going on. When he hears that there is some disturbance, he travels around. It's like if a city is well managed by the police, then they don't just wait for somebody to report crime. There are patrol cars which are constantly going around to see if there's any crime. So that's proactive detection and prevention, or at least minimization of the crime. So like that, he is not waiting for someone to come to his kingdom, to his court, to tell him there's a problem. He hears there's a problem and he himself goes out to see what is the problem. And now he's countering the crime that is happening over here. So basically in this section, the character of Parikshit Maharaj as a responsible leader is being described. And I'll talk about this initial context. I'll talk about this session in 3 parts, and then we'll have some questions. First is, so I'll use the acronym ACT for this. So A is analysis. We'll talk about what is going on. The broad topic we are discussing is the role of government in spirituality. What is the role of the king? What is the role of the ruler in fostering spiritual values or spiritual culture? So we'll talk about the analysis of what was there in the Vedic context. Then after that, we will talk about the so what is the underlying concept? And lastly, how does it apply today? So nowadays, there is, whenever people talk about, say, any kind of religion and the association of that with the government, there is that fear that, are you talking about theocracy? Are you going to impose your faith on everyone else? So in the Vedic context, there are two distinct terms. There is dharma and there is shraddha. Now, shraddha can be translated also as bhakti. Now, dharma, while sometimes nowadays it is translated as religion, dharma actually refers to order. Dharma refers to basically law and order. Now, sometimes people say that religion should never be mixed with politics. And God and politics keep it all separate. Well, Krishna comes to this world specifically for a political purpose. What do you mean by political purpose? Krishna comes to disempower and neutralize those rulers who have become disruptive. Krishna fights and dethrones Karna to Kamsa. Ram, he removes Ravana. So now, when we use the word politics, there are many meanings to the word politics. But let's do this analysis. If we see what Krishna is telling in the Bhagavad Gita, it's 4.7 and 8 are well-known verses where Krishna says that yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam dharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham. He says whenever dharma goes down, adharma comes up, I descend personally. And what do? I establish dharma. Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come to establish dharma. That is in 4.7 and 8. And then after that, in the next two verses, it is 4.9 and 10. This is where he's talking about bhakti. Srila Prabhupada would quote general Hindu community often quotes 4.7 and 8 quite a lot. Prabhupada would quote 4.9 much more. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vidhi tatvata. Those who understand the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, they become attracted to me, they become devoted to me, and they attain me. And Krishna says, for this, you need to become free from Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Manmaya Mam Upashita. Become free from anger, become free from attachment, become free from apathy. And then you'll come to me. You can take shelter of me and come to me. So, in one sense, I've drawn this as a funnel. See, dharma is mandatory. Dharma is law and order. Somebody cannot say that I won't follow the traffic rules. That is mandatory. Shraddha or bhakti is voluntary. That means that Krishna doesn't say that I will destroy those who don't become devoted. He's saying those who are disrupting society, those will be stopped. And then he says, just by seeing me here, by seeing my activities, there will be people who will get attracted to me and they will come to me. So Krishna does want, we could say, spirituality in the sense of bhakti, that Krishna wants that. But Krishna does not impose that. That is something which Krishna inspires. So, following the traffic rules is mandatory. Okay, if the police say, every morning you have to come to Krishna house for attending the morning class, that would be forcing a faith on someone. Where you drive on the road, that is up to you. But following the rules when you are driving on the road is not up to you. So dharma, although the word sometimes is translated as religion, dharma is basically order. Srila Prabhupada would explain dharma as an inherent property of an object. Now, that which makes a thing what it is. So another way to understand dharma is it is harmonious belonging. That we all belong to certain larger units. So when we belong to some larger units, we get something from that and we need to give something to that. See, now all of you are sitting for this session and some of you are sitting close to other people. Now, every one of you is quite confident that the person sitting next to you is not going to suddenly turn on you and punch you in the face. Now, is that possible? You could say anything is possible, isn't it? But if somebody is coming for a spiritual talk early in the morning, we understand they must have a basic level of discipline, a basic level of culture, a basic level of self restraint by which they won't do something so disruptive or crazy, isn't it? So, this is if you're coming for a class, there's a way to harmoniously belong to the class. Now, if somebody sits right in front and sits with their back to the speaker, that would be disharmonious belonging. Or if somebody is sitting and talking loudly on phone with someone, then that would be disharmonious belonging. So whichever unit we are belonging to, belonging harmoniously to that is the essence of dharma. So if we are going on the traveling or driving on the road, then we are belonging to the road transport system. And then we need to belong harmoniously. If we are part of a family, then we get something from the family, we are expected to give something to the family. So if we are in university, if we are having a job, we're getting a salary, we are expected to make a contribution of it. So dharma is basically harmonious belonging. And this maintaining basic harmony is essential for the functioning of society itself. And this ensuring that harmonious belonging occurs is the responsibility of the rulers. That ruler, if somebody is a ruler of a country, then they have to make sure that the citizens follow the rules of the country and the citizens are protected while they are within the country. So here Prabhupada is giving the example that even the animals are considered citizens and they also need to be protected. So we won't go into that direction of animal killing. I will focus on this basic principle of dharma, that harmonious belonging. So now dharma in that sense has two aspects. So harmonious belonging, there is an individual level to it and there is a social level to it. So at an individual level, we should follow the traffic rules. That's individual dharma. But social dharma would be that the cops should not be corrupt. And the cops should not target members of a particular community because they dislike those members. You know, a small crime by, or a small, as they say, what are the two kinds of larceny and felony? A small larceny, a minor crime by people from one demographic is a huge charge against them. And a big crime by someone else from another community and it's just overlooked, it's downplayed. So dharma means it is the individual has to belong harmoniously, but the social unit also has to perform harmoniously. So both of these together are dharma. And maintaining the order of the larger units that a person belongs to is the responsibility of the head, whoever the head of the state may be. Whoever the head, now this applies not just to kings. You know, the word, as I said, the word politics, it has two different meanings. There is a neutral meaning and there is a negative meaning. The neutral meaning is politics is basically the art or the science or the system of administration. So every place will have to have a political system. Like political science is a field where we study. We may study democracy, we may study monarchy, we may study communism. So neutral, it is a system of administration. So we cannot live without some kind of political system of administration management. The negative sense is manipulation. You know, don't bring politics into this. You know, don't do politics over here. We're not here for politics. Don't be hungry for power and don't backstab, don't manipulate. So when we are using the word politics here, it is more in that neutral sense. That every society or every group, every unit where people belong, every unit that is bigger than an individual will require some managerial system, some administrative system. And that administrative system would be the political system over there. The political system could be, we have democracy. Sometimes we may have multiple admins, but one person may have veto over it. And all of you can vote, but I will veto. Like in the UN Security Council, there are 5 members who have the veto power. So this is how things are managed. So it is both the individuals should be law abiding and the system should be enforcing the law in a fair way. It should not be discriminatory. It should not be disproportionate. So dharma refers to both these things. Now, if you see the war that was fought after the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, that was between two parties. Who were those two parties? You know the names? Pandavas and the Kurus, the Kauravas. Now, interestingly, was it the Pandavas were devotees and the Kauravas were non-devotees? Yeah, so it is not a war between devotees and non-devotees. It is, if you see among the Pandavas, now specifically when we talk about the word devotees, we refer to Vaishnavas. We are in the Vaishnava tradition where we worship Vishnu Krishna. Now it's interesting that on the Kaurava side, there were Vaishnavas. Who were the Vaishnavas on the Kaurava side? Bhishma himself was there. Dronacharya was not a Vaishnava. Dronacharya was a Shaivite. But there was another king named Bhurishrava. He was a Vaishnava. Now, on the Pandava side, there were Shaivites. Shaivites are those who worship Lord Shiva. And so, Drupada himself, his family was Lord Shiva. So, it was not a religious war. It was not that Krishna devotees or Vishnu devotees were imposing Vishnu devotion on everyone else. It was not that when Krishna went as a peace messenger to the Kaurava, he said, you all start chanting Hare Krishna, then there will no war will be there. So it was not for religious imposition. Duryodhan was such a terrible ruler that he tried to dishonor and disrobe Draupadi in public in the royal assembly. There will always be in the world men who will be predators. It's an unfortunate reality. It is there. But such predatory men generally would prey on some woman in some lonely street where there is no evidence, no eyewitnesses. They have some fear of the law. But if somebody does something like this in public, then that means they have no fear of the law. But if somebody goes to a police station or somebody goes to a court and commits a crime over there, and that means not only do they have no fear of the law has fear of them. And such people would be brazen and brutal, and they need to be stopped. So Duryodhan's actions against Draupadi fell in this category. And he was not ready to reform at all. So the war was fought to establish dharma. It was not to impose bhakti. It was not that Yudhishthir told Dhritarashtra, if you don't chant Hare Krishna, I'll shoot you. After now that I have defeated you, I'll force my faith on you. He did not do that. So dharma is basically you could say law and order in a broad sense, but it is basically the system by which harmonious belonging is possible. So for harmonious belonging to be possible, it's both ways. That at an individual level, the individuals should be responsible to follow the rules that are expected of them. And the administrators should be fair. So when Krishna says, I come to establish dharma, what he means by that is, he is changing those who are ruling the system because they are not fair. They are exploitative, they are manipulative, they are evil. So that is one aspect of it. Now, so the analysis I talked about here is that the Gita and the broad Vedic tradition is that dharma is to be established by the king. It is not that bhakti is to be imposed. There are many kings in history. There was a famous king, Krishna Dev Rai. He built a Vijayanagara empire. in India. It's one of the most prosperous kingdoms in the medieval times. And he belonged to a particular faith. He was a Vaishnava. He was following the Madhva Sampradaya. Then one of his descendants, he started following the Shri Sampradaya. And one of his successors started following the Advaita Sampradaya. He followed an impersonalist leader. But it is not that when the personal faith of the ruler changed, that the king decided, okay, now because I am a Vaishnava, I will destroy all Mayavadis. Not that, or I am a Mayavadi, I will destroy all Vaishnavas. He didn't do that. That it was his personal faith, and naturally, because it was his personal faith, he would give more donations, he would facilitate, build maybe temples or provide educational support for that particular tradition. But he would not impose his faith on others. That's not a king's job description. So that brings me to the second part. I said first we'll talk about analysis. And now what is the concept? The underlying concept is basically with respect to free will. Now, with respect to free will, there are two distinct aspects. On one side, the free will should always be respected. Everybody has freedom. Krishna has given everyone free will. Krishna does not impose his will on everyone. Now, Krishna could have, if he had wanted, you are not ready to become my devotee, I'll destroy you. Krishna does not do that. That on one side, even when Krishna speaks the Gita, not even once does Krishna use his godhood to impose his will on Arjuna in the Gita. If that's what Krishna had wanted to do, he could have finished the whole Bhagavad Gita in 6 words. What were the 6 words? I am God. Obey me. Fight. Bhagavad Gita completed. So Krishna does not do that. Krishna builds a reasoned argument for Arjuna to understand and accept what Krishna is saying. So the other aspect of free will needs to be guided. It needs to be refined. We have free will, but that doesn't mean that we allow that free will always knows what is good for us. So you could put this as a pendulum. At one extreme, the free will is only respected and not guided at all. Then, okay, you can do whatever you want. Does that mean that, I want to kill myself, let me kill myself. I want to kill you, I'll kill you also. I respect your free will. No. Free will always has to have some boundaries. With respect to free will, it's only respected, then it can become very disruptive and destructive. It has to, now, on the other hand, if it is only restricted. Now, when I say restricted, it means no, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this. In the Bible, there are the 10 commandments. So there's an atheist spoof against the Bible. So it says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. So that's the saying in the statement in the Bible. But how the atheist says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was no. The Word was no means you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot do that. So if religion and spirituality are seen as just no, people, there'll be rebellion. People will become rebellious and will not be able to sustain it. So with respect to free will, what has to be done is, at one level, it has to be appreciated that everyone has free will and we cannot impose anything on anyone. But at the same time, it also has to be elevated. What is really good for you? You can say it's elevated or educated. So we need to accommodate, the free will has to be accommodated. We cannot impose anything on anyone. But at the same time, what is the best use of the free will? That also has to be done. So this is the broad way Krishna himself manages the material world. And what does this mean in terms of the government? You have the head of state, you have the ruler, whatever it is. the one extreme would be imposition of one's faith. Now, in European history, this happened that there was a 100-year war between the Protestants and the Catholics, and both were trying to impose their faith on others. So, if the head of state would become, in the history of England, it happened that when the king was a Protestant would persecute the Catholics, and if the king became Catholic, then the Catholic would persecute the Protestants. So now the king is not meant to impose faith. The king is not meant to punish people who follow a different faith. In India, when there was Islamic rule, apart from the much destruction of the temples and other things that happened, that was intermittent. It was severe when it happened. But for a large period of Islamic history, there was a tax called jizya. That was a discriminatory task. Anybody who was not a Muslim had to pay that tax. And if you just became Muslim, that tax would be waived off completely. So now this is discrimination. It can be at various levels, but the king cannot impose based on faith. But on the other side, one is imposition. That cannot be done. But the other side is condemnation. The king, the head of state, is not meant to impose one's own faith, but the head of state is also not meant to condemn faith. It is not meant to reject faith. So this is what happened, say, in France when the French Revolution happened. After that, France became aggressively anti-religious. They had the Notre Dame was renamed as a temple of reason, and they started rejecting religion and they persecuted religious people. That's what was tried at a mass level in communism in China and Russia, in China and Soviet Russia, USSR. So people often say religion is the cause of war. Well, Soviet Russia and China are examples of states that were administered without any religion, or rather official rejection of religion. And what was the result? The result was 100 million corpses. The number of people killed during the communist regime was more than World War I and World War II combined and doubled also. So that was the state persecuted. So the state becoming officially aggressively atheistic is also not healthy. So in between is the state should provide inspiration. Not imposition, but inspiration. Inspiration to follow a particular set of values, a set of principles. So dharma needs to be established. It needs to be enforced. But spirituality has to be inspired. It cannot be forced on people. So now that brings us to the context today. What do we do today? So if we look at history of the world, secularism that is prominently there. Now, as an idea, secularism is said to have evolved in Europe, and secularism is at one level humility. Humility in the political domain. What do I mean by humility in the political domain? It is not the business of the head of state to legislate faith. It is to a large extent when this humility was accepted. Each individual can have their own faith. That is accepted. That's where to some extent peace has been there. Now, if this changes, then there is going to be that's disruption. There is violence. So in India, we did not have, say, Christianity, Islam, and other such these faiths were not there traditionally in the Vedic times, but still there were Shaivites, there were Vaishnavites, there were different faiths in that sense. And the kings were actually secular. Now secularism can mean three different things. It can mean neutrality towards faith, Shraddha or Bhakti, neutrality. But historically, this was what secularism was intended to be, neutrality. But afterwards, it became apathy. Neutrality means that the state will not impose any particular faith. But we don't care about it at all. That is bad. And over a period of time, in some places at work, it has become hostility. Become hostility or antipathy towards faith. So neutrality is good, apathy is worse, hostility is by far the worst. The state should not be opposed to people being spiritual. So, like Marxism, their ideology is religion is the opium of the masses. So now that's why he was aggressively against religion. That's what communism tried to do, and that has not worked at all in history. It's not just from a spiritual perspective, even from a, as I said, from a law and order perspective. If people do not have some higher purpose for their lives, a higher sense of meaning, then the craving for worldly things will become excessive and disruptive and destructive. So, what can we do at our level today? It is, for all of us, when we are individual citizens, most of us, we live in democratic countries. So we have, to some extent, some power, some sense of agency by the votes we give. So broadly speaking, when we look for a head of state, the first criteria should be dharma. And the second can be shraddha or bhakti. Say, it is not that just because some head of state is of my faith, that's why I will vote for it. That's an important consideration, but that should not be the sole consideration. Why not? Because politics is serious work. If I got a heart attack, now would I go to a devotee heart surgeon or non-devotee heart surgeon? Yeah, whichever one's better, isn't it? If a devotee heart surgeon says, I promise you that when doing surgery, I'll chant Hare Krishna. That's nice. But will you do the surgery properly? I can't guarantee that, but I'll chant Hare Krishna. People say, I want to go back to Godhead, but not so early. So, just as in any field when we function, material world, functioning any field is a serious business, and it requires competence. It requires competence to function in that particular field. And if somebody doesn't have that competence, having that person as a leader will lead to chaos. See, most of the problems that are there, if you consider African countries, have not progressed so much. And is it because of religion? Actually, among all the continents, you could say Africa is the most religious continent. Half of it is Christian, half of it is Muslim. And both of them are quite aggressive with that. And if you see, most of the problems are not because of religion. There are, of course, problems because of religion, but it is because of bad leaders. And bad means they're bad simply in material terms. They are rajasic, more than tamasic leaders who will just earn a lot of money, who will just aggrandize a lot of money while the people are starving. People are suffering. So this is not to pile on Africa. I'm just giving this as an example that religious affiliation is not as important a qualification for a leader as material competence. Now, of course, if there is material competence and there is a spiritual inclination, there's a religious alignment, that's even better. So Arjuna succeeded in the Kurukshetra war not just because he was a devotee, also because he was a great archer. His son was a great devotee, but his son was not that great an archer, and Abhimanyu got trapped and he died. So in the material world is a harsh place, and we need competence over it. So when we are exercising our political discretion, we want to consider both these factors, that the capacity of the leader to establish dharma and the capacity of the leader to inspire bhakti. However, even if the government is completely non-theistic, but if they maintain basic law and order, we can practice our faith and we can inspire others to practice. We can share our faith with others. But if there is complete law and order chaos, then you might be sitting in a class like this and somebody throws a bomb from the window. Or suddenly some bomb explodes. We won't be able to function. How much can we function? So in that sense, we need to be clear. Krishna calls upon Arjuna to do his duty, which in this case was to fight a war to establish dharma. And the Gita has spoken so that he would do it in a spiritual consciousness. And in that sense, we for each one of us, there is dharma. So I'll conclude with this point now. There is dharma is we belong harmoniously. Each one of us may belong to various units. Say, for example, we are in this classroom, we belong to this classroom. Now, we are in the city of Gainesville. So, there are some rules of Gainesville. We are in Florida. We are in America. So, like that, we all belong to larger and larger units. So, the ultimate unit that we belong to, that all units are rested in, is God. So, Krishna is, in that sense, we're following all of these is dharma. From each of these, we are getting something and we need to be giving something. But all of them ultimately culminate in Krishna. And that's why bhakti is the highest dharma. Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. So it's not that dharma and bhakti are unrelated. The highest dharma is bhakti, and that's what is ultimately to be practiced. But that has to be individually practiced because it's a matter of the heart. Matters of the heart cannot be imposed by the law, nor can they be legislated by the law. They have to be. So all the other dharmas should be arranged in such a way that a person becomes inspired to follow the highest dharma. That so the family, the parents should be in such a way that they inspire children to become devotees. The school should be such that they inspire students to become devotees. The social culture should be such that they inspire people to come to Paradharma. But nobody can impose. If our child does not become a devotee, that does not mean we should stop loving our child. As a parent, our dharma is there. We should take care of the child. If our parents are not become devotees, now they should not be opposing our devotion and crushing our devotion. Then we have to draw some boundaries. But just because they're not devotees does not mean that we reject them. We would like to inspire bhakti, but dharma is something which we all need to follow. So I'll summarize what I discussed. Broadly, we discussed 3 points. The topic was the role of the head of state, role of king, or role of politics in spirituality. So, or rather, you could put it other way. What is the head of state going to do with respect to spirituality? So I talk about first was I give context that this is Parikshit Maharaj's qualification described. So A was the analysis. The analysis was Krishna comes to establish dharma and inspire bhakti, not to impose bhakti. So it's like a funnel. Dharma is something which everybody has to follow. This is 4.7 and 8 in the Gita. And then Bhakti, Krishna himself said that very few people, one among thousands, will actually practice bhakti. This is something which is to be enforced, law and order. This is to be inspired. And discussed how the Kurukshetra war was not a war between devotees and non-devotees. So the Pandavas, it's not that they were all devotees and the Kauravas were all non-devotees. It is a war over a law and order issue, not a devotional issue. So then we talk about the concept over there. I spent a lot of time in the analysis part itself. The concept was what? The free will is to be respected. Now, free will is to be respected, but if it's only respected, then there will be a problem. If it's only respected, then people will abuse it. Only restricted, it will cause suffocation. So what it is to be refined. Refined means, how do you refine it? On one side, it is to be appreciated, but it's also be elevated or educated. Everybody has free will, and we want to elevate their free will. So like that, the head is not meant to, imposition of faith is not to be there, but nor is there meant to be the rejection of faith, which is unfortunately what has happened with respect to secularism. In between is inspiration. The faith has to be inspired. The last part I talked about was today. So what has happened is secularism is largely present in most parts of the world. Secularism originally started as what? Neutrality towards religion. But from neutrality it became apathy. And in some parts it has become hostility. Now that is unwanted. And then when we are trying to select a leader, we would like to see both material competence, that is the capacity to establish dharma. And yes, it will say the spiritual devotion or spiritual inclination. That would be bhakti. So while both are important, but actually material competence is much more important. And when we have this, then at a basic level, the king will maintain order. So the king is not, Parikshit is not punishing Kali because he's a non-devotee. Parikshit is punishing Kali because he is being cruel. He's disrupting law and order. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Do we have time? Yes.
So my question is in regard to, by the way, thank you so much. This is so brilliant. And my mind is totally blown. And I can't wait to just like turn this over 1,000 times to really understand it. But my question is actually within the context of ISKCON and Bhakti. I would just love you to speak on this concept of free will and what to do when those who are your authority restrict free will. Specifically within the ISKCON context and the fact that there is like a clear hierarchical structure.
Yeah, see, in general, there are two distinct things. One is autonomy and the other is facility. Now, in general, nowhere in the world, in any institution, will we get both of those together. Now, if I come here, to give a talk, I got the facility. There's a system over here, there's an audience over here. So now if I come here and if I say I want to speak on politics directly, no, we don't talk politics over here. And if I say that I want to speak on Vedanta Sutra, so no, we speak on the Bhagavatam. So just by using this facility, some of my autonomy is going to be restricted. Now, if I want the autonomy, if I want to teach Vedanta Sutras, then I have the facility, I have the autonomy to do that, but I cannot demand facility. So if I want a particular facility, that will require me to sacrifice some of my autonomy. So now each one of us has to decide based on our individual needs, and our individual inspirations. So which one do I need more, or which one is more important for me? So when we say the ISKCON authority is restricting our free will, at least the way I am understanding it is that there are certain things within any institutional framework, there will be some restriction on the autonomy. If somebody says, I want to become a devotee, I want to be initiated in ISKCON, but I don't want to chant Hare Krishna. They say you have the free will not to chant, but then if you want to be a part of this community, this is what is required. So I would say each leader will have a particular vision and they may insist on certain things. And the advantage of the way the Prabhupada made the Krishna consciousness movement was that he made it like a nuclear joint family. What it means is that we are all a part of one joint family, but each is a nuclear family. Each center is like a nuclear family, in the sense that if we can't gel with at one particular place, if we find that the rules are too strict over here, or that ambience atmosphere is not that good, we can always go to some other place. So we have that autonomy. Now, can we change the place itself? Well, it depends. So I would say this is the broad. We cannot expect that there won't be some regulation of our autonomy when we take some facility. Now, is the leader becoming exploitative, destructive? If that is happening, then we may have to escalate the matters to the GBC or to ISKCON Resolve. We have mediation forums, we have ombudsmen, and there we can take care. But so that is, I would say, an exception that if that can happen, that's unfortunate. But in general, the principle is that if we want autonomy, we may have to forego of the facility.
Yeah, I have a question about dharma. So I understand the dharma as a generic thing where Lord Krishna has given some dharma for to follow. So that is a generic one. But if you come as into a family, you are the head person, you should follow some dharma. So how can I know that I'm following right dharma at my home? Is that what I'm doing right? So that okay, we need to pray, we need
The,
to
whole-
respect.
yeah, the whole of Mahabharata is basically a search for understanding what is dharma, and it's not easy. So it's not, and it doesn't. That doesn't mean that we should not care for dharma. It's like, say, if we have to make a decision that I want to offer the best for my children, but maybe one place we have a good culture in the school, but maybe the education is not very good over there. Another place the education is good, but the overall campus culture, the student college culture, school culture is not very good. Now, which is the place where we should admit our child? It's a decision. Is there a right answer? No, each person has to deliberate and decide. So even when Krishna is with Arjuna, after speaking the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does not microcontrol Arjuna. It is not that before every arrow that Arjuna is shooting, Krishna, should I shoot this arrow? Do I have your permission? No, he's his own person. So we have to use our best intelligence. Now, the more we pray to Krishna, the more we are serious in our spiritual practices, the more it is likely that we will get guidance from within to make good decisions. But ultimately, there is a certain level of uncertainty that's going to be there. And it's like the compass will get more and more refined by practice. That's why talking with senior devotees, having some spiritual guides, and basically aligning our spiritual compass through purification association is very helpful.
Thank you, Prabhu.
This was absolutely amazing and mind blowing. Thank you so much. My question is because you talked about how the qualifications of a leader is first and foremost dharma and second shraddha, and that the leader also never, forces the faith on someone. So thank you. That's so important. And also, we hear that Srila Prabhupada's books will become the law books for the next 10,000 years, and that the golden age of Krishna consciousness is coming. And Srila Prabhupada, Jai Shishikun. And Srila Prabhupada also, he actually did encourage devotees to run for political office. So I was wondering, in the context of ISKCON expanding and growing in the golden age, like what exactly does that golden age look like in terms of your presentation today? And although dharma, is like the first qualification of a leader, we also hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam how when the ruler is God conscious, and is a devotee, then all good fortune comes. They're not forcing it on others, but their example, and because they are a devotee of Krishna and connected to that highest dharma, then everything flows nicely.
Yeah, good points. So, regarding the Prabhupada's books becoming law books, as far as I have seen, it was one conversation which Prabhupada said that. It's not something which Prabhupada said repeatedly. And now, even when you use the word law books, laws are also, they are also amended according to time, place, circumstance. The constitution is amended, what to speak of law books. So, my understanding, I'm not saying Prabhupada's books will be amended. My point is that you cannot have one frozen book which can be used for all matters at all times. If what to speak of managing the whole world according to Prabhupada's books, are we able to manage ISKCON itself literally according to everything that Prabhupada said? No, we have to adjust things. Prabhupada said in the books we have Mangala Aarti at 4:30. Some places we might have 5 at 5, we may have it a little later. We have to adjust upon time itself. So Prabhupada in his own books has given the principle of flexibility, Desha Kala Patra, so time, place, candidate. That's also a principle to consider. So my understanding is from Srila Prabhupada's books, we'll get the principles. And the specific application will have to be on time, place, circumstance. Even during Prabhupada's times, different ISKCON centers were doing many different things. And what Prabhupada said happened, what happened in Soviet Russia, for example, or in Pakistan, the way devotees did outreach was very different from in America or India. So that we cannot, the law books say quote cannot be taken out of context. Now, with respect to whether if that leader is devoted, if all things follow, I have not seen that happen even in ISKCON. That means, say, just because the leader chants Hare Krishna attentively every day, is there for the full morning program, does that mean the project will be wonderfully managed? Somebody can be a very serious sadhaka, and that's wonderful. That is a good example, a good inspiration. But just by the leader being a good sadhaka, does that mean everything automatically gets managed? There's now definitely, if the leader is a good sadhaka, leader sets a good example, everybody does sadhana nicely, that will lead to a certain decrease in anarthas in everyone. Personal ambition, if everybody is getting the higher taste, personal ambition will not be that much. The lust and the anger and all the issues that come because of that, they will not be that much. But beyond that, life itself has many challenges to deal with. And we need expertise in dealing with those challenges. So one of the most frustrating experiences for a devotee that I have seen is you go to a leader with a practical problem. And the leader gives a philosophical solution. If you want to do that, then be a Brahmana. Don't be a Kshatriya. That means what? Say now after this program there is prasad. Now, but suppose there is no prasad. Somehow they forgot to cook or they messed up and didn't cook. And you go to the who is in charge and say, there's no prasad. Let's chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Now, if you want to say that, that's fine. But don't be the kitchen in charge of that. Isn't it? So, if you are going to be a Kshatriya, then you have to give a practical solution. Now, along with the practical solution, you can give a philosophical perspective. This is the Kshatriya's business. So when the manager avoids doing managerial tasks and just gives philosophical solutions, then devotees get very frustrated. It doesn't work like that. If there is some devotee who is very abusive, who is whatever is abusive, and that devotee is hurting everyone. You go to the manager and the manager says, we all chant Hare Krishna, learn to tolerate, see it as your own karma. That will only enable the abuser to abuse more things. Is Parikshit Maharaj telling the bull over here, see it as your own past karma, tolerate it? No, he's taking aggressive action. So to complete this answer, what I would say is that the leader having spiritual values and spiritual devotion is important. At the same time, the material world is a tough place. And see, Prabhupada did not think that, just with my purity, if I just chant Hare Krishna, the whole world will become Krishna conscious. Prabhupada traveled to America at the age of 70. It was a material change that he made in his physical location. And if you see one of the last instructions that Prabhupada said, how will Krishna consciousness spread? He said it is by organization and intelligence. If you see organizing intelligence, is that spirituality? Well, you could say yes. Prabhupada did not say just by chanting Hare Krishna or attending the morning program regularly, Krishna consciousness will spread. That's of course important. But it is if we are to be effective in the material world has its truths. And we have to respect those truths. The material world functions according to certain principles. And if we neglect those principles, then things are not going to function. And one of the principles is that we need people who are competent to do the corresponding jobs. That is the essence of Varanashram. Varanashram is not about boxing people into certain categories. It's basically ensuring that competent people are doing the jobs at which they are competent. Okay. Thank you. So we take the last question. Yeah, sure. We can talk one to one if you don't mind.